Hello guys, and welcome to another episode of MTG Brewery. This week we're bringing you Junk Reanimator. We're only doing this one deck take this week, not this and the other deck we're going to be playing, which is Esper Aggro, kind of a take on the Esper mid-range deck that's been running around, a much more aggressive version of it. But this is the deck that I'll be piloting, and we're going to go ahead and get right into it. We have our main reanimation target is 4 Ashen Riders. Where we're playing, I expect control most in red-green most of the time. This is good against both of those decks, but I like to hedge against control more in my main deck because that's a lot bigger. If you expect more red-green or other creature decks, you'd probably prefer Angel of Serenity over it. But this is the reanimation threat I've chosen to play as my 4 of. I also have 2 Obsidots, very good in both of those matchups. Also, he can help stabilize against the aggressive decks, especially if we have a Whip of Erebos in play. Very good against Mono Black, especially when we have a Whip in play, because they can only kill him so many times, because they only have so many downfalls. He doesn't Doomblade, Ultimate Price, or Bile Blight, so he dodges most of their removal. So he's really good in a lot of matchups. That's why we have him. We have 1 Blood Baron, because as good as it is against certain decks, it's also really bad against red-green monsters, because it gets outclassed by pretty much every creature in their deck. So we didn't want too many of him. Even though he's good against like blue-white, he still gets Supreme Verdicted, unlike Obsidot, and Supreme Verdicting with Ashen Rider isn't always the best option for them because of its die trigger. So we did want 1 in our 75, so that's what we went with. We have another one is 1 Lifebane Zombie, good against the green-red monsters deck because most of their threats are green outside of Stormbreath Dragon, so it'll hit most of them out of their hand, and against many decks, it's just going to be a 3-1 unblockable. And in the mono-black matchup, if we can't go ahead and get around their creatures like Nightveil Spectre and Pack Rat, because we'll normally be able to answer Grey Merchants and Desecration Demons with our Ashen Riders. This will hopefully trade, at worst case, trade with Nightveil Spectre or Pack Rat, which we're always fine with doing early in the game. As well as we also get to see information out of control players' hands. Never really bad. Lets us know what we're playing around, what we're playing against, so we can plan accordingly. We also have 2 Voice Resurgence, good in pretty much every matchup, probably one of the better cards out of the Ravnica block. So we wanted 2 of those. We'd play 4, but our other main 2-drop is Lotleth Trail. Probably one of the best cards for this deck, as it does have Regenerate, so it's good against the red-green and the aggro matchups, because he will block multiple times. Being able to discard a creature card was also what helped us push him into our deck, because we can't always just throw our creatures into our graveyard, because sometimes our draws are a bit awkward. So having him in play to discard like Ashen Riders to whip them back or reanimate them with Obsidot's Aid to rescue from their underworld made him a really invaluable tool for our deck, so we wanted 2 of him. And then we have 2-Sider Wayfinder. We did 2/2 split of this and Commune with the God, because early, we definitely want to be grabbing lands, which this allows us to do really early. It also plays nicely with Whip of Erebos and Lotleth Troll when we don't really need to be digging, or we need to start digging. We can discard Lotleth Troll when we don't. We can rip it back when we need to. He's really good in a lot of situations. He also blocks early and can block Soldier of Pantheon, which is a really big deal for our deck, as most of our creatures can't trade with it. This is one of the few that can. And then we go to our the last of our creatures, Sylvan Caryatid and Deathrite Shaman. Mainly, these are our 8 early ramp spells, but Deathrite Shaman just gives our deck a lot more reach and a lot more versatility as we're filling our own graveyard. We don't always want to reanimate things like Sylvan Caryatid if we put them in the graveyard, so gaining 2 life off of them if they get in there will be really helpful. He can allow us to clock control decks faster, or clock in board stalls, which can happen with this deck because we're just a mainly creature deck, as well as being able to ramp, and he's our only 1-drop, so we wanted him in the deck because he does so much for our deck. And then we have 2 Whip of Erebos and 4 Obsidot's Aid as our sorcery speed reanimation, and being able to reanimate Whip of Erebos with Obsidot's Aid is also a nice little trick. Whip of Erebos giving lifelink has also been a huge thing for our deck, because it's allowed us to race aggro players with just like whipping back an Ash-Shredder, exiling their best creature, attacking for 5 can really change the swing of the game. And Whip of Erebos plus Obsidot's good against pretty much every deck, as we'll just be able to keep bringing him back, especially against Mono Black if they manage to kill Obsidot with their hero's downfalls. He dodges pretty much all of their other removal, so whipping him back is really good in those matchups. Obsidot's Aid, kind of just the best reanimation spell in Standard. just get back anything we want for 5 mana, and pretty easy to cast, so we definitely wanted 4 of those instead of 4 Rescue from the Underworld. And then we have 2 Green with Gods. It grabs creatures or enchantments, so it can grab any of the creatures. Normally early it's going to grab Stone Carrotids, late it'll grab Ashen Riders, Opposite Dots, Blood Barons, and it can get Whip of Erebos, which was a huge thing, so we definitely wanted to have some number of these in our deck. And then we had 2 Rescue from the Underworld. The other reanimation spell we chose to play, it plays really nicely with Voice of Resurgence and Ashen Rider, being able to get the die trigger off of them, and then getting, like with Ashen Rider, another end of the battlefield trigger, and then whatever we got back. So we definitely wanted some of these. And then we have 4 Grizzly Salvage. Our main dig spell, it's green-black, so it's not really that hard to cast as we're base green and black. Revealing top 5 cards, we get a creature or land card. It grabs the 2 things that we really want to grab early. If we could play 8 of these, we would, because we don't always want to grab Whip, because we can just Opposite Dots 8 it back. And we always want to be grabbing lands pretty much starting turn 2 unless our hand is just chock full of lands, so we always wanted to draw these, so we have to have 4, the main dig spell for our deck. And then that's all of our spells. We have our mana base, pretty standard except for these Selesnya Guild Gates. If you have the temples, you definitely play the temples over them, but since I don't yet, we're playing 2 Selesnya Guild Gate. And we have our basics. So that's our main deck, and I really hope you enjoyed it, and will join us for a second in the sideboard. Alright, welcome back to our sideboard, and as you can see we have some 1-ofs and then multiples of spells. We can play 1-of creatures and like permanents, because we can reanimate those with Opposite Dots aids. We have to play multiple numbers or multiple cards that do the same thing of actual spells, because we can't regularly get them. We can mill them with our dig, so we would need to play multiple of those to actually hit one a game. That's just the kind of quick overview I wanted to do before we actually got into it. We have 1 Elspeth, kind of for the control and the red-green matchups. Really good in both those. We can, like I said, reanimate with Opposite Dots aids. As many of the cards in our sideboard, it does pretty much everything we want to in both of those matchups. And if we get to Ultimate, we do get to win the game, but it's normally going to be in there to pressure them, or against red-green monsters, kill everything that's threatening us, so we can win the game that way, go late game, which we have a much better late game than red-green monsters, especially after sideboarding. We have 1 Roscoe for the control matchups, also good against the green-red matchups, being able to kill Planeswalkers or Polycranoses, and mainly Stormbreath Dragon, which is a really big problem for this deck, so we wanted a permanent way to answer it, so we could reanimate it with Opposite Dots aid. Not to mention against control decks, if they need to find a way to kill this, or it will ultimate, it can kill their Planeswalkers into Tension Spheres, also a really big thing. And at 5 mana, it's also not bad just casting this for 5 mana. Then we have 1 Angel Serenity, very good against the creature decks, but not amazing against control decks. We wanted 1 in our sideboard for that reason. Being able to exile 3 creatures is a really big deal, especially against red-green monsters. It'll exile everything but Stormbreath Dragon, so that'll buy us a lot of time and allow us to win the race. Especially since this is a flyer, a lot of decks won't be able to block this or erase it. So another really good card to have access to. And then Armada Worm, pretty much for the control and the red-green monsters matchup. Having 2 5/5s with trample, especially with a Whip of Erebos, red-green monsters just can't erase that. Short of Monstressing a Stormbreath Dragon or a Polycranos, assuming we don't exile a Polycranos with Ashen Rider and Angel Serenity, they won't really be able to handle this. And control 2, if they say Supreme Verdict, you untap, just go Armada Worm. You get 2 5/5s with trample, they're going to have to find a way to answer it. Or if you Whip of Erebos it back, you still have a 5/5 afterwards to keep beating them with, and you got the 5/5 that hit them that turn and gain 5 life. So really handy. We have 1 Reap the Wilds, hexproof threat for the control matchups. You could bring it in against the mono black matchups, not really necessary. And the Scry one's also just really nice if they Supreme Verdict away like a bunch of Mana Dorks and the Reaper of the Wilds. So it's a really solid card there. It's probably a lot better than Blood Baron if you have room against the red-green deck, because it will trade up. And also having a 4 power allows it to effectively threaten people, especially the red-green monsters. We need to be able to threaten them quickly. Then we have 2 Sin Collectors solely for the control and mono black matchups. Being able to reanimate these multiple times allows us to have a lot of game against them, especially since we don't really have access to Thoughtseize or Duresses, because we're going to be milling those the later the game goes, so we won't be able to draw them late game to resolve things. So we have Sin Collectors, because we can whip them back, or Opposite Dots aid, or Rescue from the Underworld those back. And against A really handy tool against burn, being able to strip multiple spells, hopefully Worthy's Helixes and Boros Charms, just really handy. We have one Deadbridge Chant, kind of for the mono black and red green matchup, to kind of just grind out the card advantage that we can use to beat them. We don't really want it against blue white, because if they Detention Sphere this and we don't have an answer to Detention Sphere, it's just going to hurt us so much and put us way behind, even though we did mill 10, which we want to do. If we don't hit Reanimation in our hand or draw it, we just lose so much tempo and so much value. So we didn't really want that in our main deck, but it's a good sideboard option. And then the rest of our sideboard's removal for the aggro and red-green matchup. Hero's Downfall, Putrefy, and Abrupt Decay. Just kind of spreading out our removal so we can do multiple things across multiple sideboard matchups, and they're all good against aggro, which we want, because we don't really want to be the Reanimator deck. We want to be the mid-range deck and just stabilize. So that's our deck. We hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe.